Lovely. Okay, so yes, my name is Yasmin Moller. I'm workplace wellbeing consultant. So working with a number of organisations to help support their employees with their wellbeing, one small step at a time. So I work with everyone from Hertfordshire Council to media companies such as Pioneer DJ. I work with financial organisations within the St James's Place portfolio. And a number of charities, including one YMCA, who are here today. So great to see you, Peter. And it's all about small, actionable changes that employees can make to help improve their well-being, and to sort of be able to show up as happier, more productive teams, staff, individuals. At the end of the day, if we all feel sort of happier and better with our well-being, we're going to be able to show up as our best possible selves as well. And my focus is very much about preventative health. So it's about not waiting for something to happen, but about what can we do to prevent things and to keep topping up our well-being and our resilience as we go along as well. And today's topic is a very popular one, sleep. We all sleep, some of us better than others. And it's about unlocking the benefits of better sleep. So research has shown that only a third of employees actually get a good night's sleep. So I'm sure amongst all of us, there's some of us that will be struggling with sleep. And if it's not ourselves, it might be our partners, our children, our colleagues. So it's all about sort of educating people and having a better understanding as well of these things. So I thought we'd kick off just to get a sense of who's in the room and ask you a quick poll question of how good a sleeper are you? So hopefully Matt will be able to launch the polls. And then we've got the option of yes, no, or sometimes. If they're popping up, I can't see it on my screen, but maybe they've come up elsewhere. Oh, there we go. Oh, we've got all the questions, okay. Okay, well, maybe we can just answer the first one. So, yeah, are you a good sleeper? So, yes, no, or sometimes, if you wouldn't mind popping your answer in there. And then you just click on submit, and then we should be able to get a sense. I think on average, adults need, just to give you a guide, sort of 7 to 9 hours sleep. But it's not just about the amount of sleep we're getting, it's also about the quality of that sleep as well. Someone already rates the webinar as excellent. That's brilliant. I do good job already, so thank you. But in terms of sleep poll, so it's yes, no, or sometimes. So half of you, I think, said sometimes, and then most of you said no. Some of you said yes. So I think hopefully today there's going to be lots of practical tips to help you just to kind of nudge that dial a little bit, and to improve all of your sleep. So if we just go slightly before kicking off on the topic of rest, I look at well-being as having 5 key pillars, with rest being the core foundation, if you like, because without sleep, we're pretty useless, really. I think we can survive without food to a certain extent, exercise, all these different things, but even just one night of bad sleep can, I'm sure you'll be familiar, have a detrimental effect on how we show up the next day. So it's a really good foundation, and all of these pillars sort of feed into each other as well. So things like fuel, so what we eat and drink will affect how we sleep, our level of movement, our mindset, our mental well-being, which is the Thrive pillar. All of these things really come together well to support us in the best possible way with our well-being. And in terms of my approach, so I have a research and kind of a science background. So I'm always looking at kind of what the sort of pathway through to thinking about why these things matter. So I always start with the data. So for example, with sleep, what's the data showing us about, like the stat we just saw, the fact that only a third of employees are actually getting a good night's sleep, and what does the data show us about different things like insomnia and things that might be impacting on our sleep. Next is the science, so sort of from the neuroscience perspective. So what's happening inside our brains when we're sleeping? You might think nothing, but actually today we'll find out there's quite a lot going on when we're asleep. And what does the science tell us about if we go through prolonged periods of sleep? What impact does that have on our productivity, our well-being, and our general physical health as well? The why, it's important to know, well, why should we care? So in this case, we know that instant feeling of when you wake up feeling groggy and a bit sort of phase the next day after sleep, but also it's about understanding those longer term implications that it may bring as well. And as I said at the beginning, prevention as well is very much a focus. So all these little tweaks, and they are going to be little tweaks. It's not going to be that you're going to go away with a whole list of long list of homework to do. It's just one, at the end of today's session, I'll ask you to commit to just one thing that you're going to do to help to improve your sleep or your quality of sleep. Life hacks. So we all love a good hack. So again, these simple things that we can kind of tweak and do. And then that reminder, the power of small. So you think of that cumulative effect. So little tweaks that we can make to all of our well-being will result in bigger things over time, and it feels much more manageable, and it's all about consistency, really. So in terms of today's session, what I plan to cover is all about why we sleep. And understanding what happens while we're asleep, the sleep cycles that we go through. So we go through different patterns of sleep through the night, all the amazing things that happen while we're asleep. And then importantly, what happens when we don't sleep, and then plenty of tips on sleep hygiene and kind of how you can improve your sleep. So we do have a couple of polls and discussion points as we go through, but please do feel free to add any questions in the chat as we go through. Always happy to try to tailor the sessions as much as possible and to help with specific areas. Okay, so starting off, so how can sleep improve your well-being? Well, it does things like fosters positive mental health. It can enhance your mood. Massive thing on immunity. So if you're not sleeping well, you're much more susceptible to getting ill. And also just really helps to improve your focus. So a lot of you will be thinking in terms of a business context today, kind of how you show up either for running your own business, or if you're managing teams as well, how they show up on the amount of sleep they're surviving on. And sometimes it is surviving on sleep as well. So the things that we can do to support each other as well as ourselves is really important here, and will have a positive effect as well. So why do we sleep? So sleeping doesn't really make sense. If we think about it from kind of our hunter-gatherer days, actually it's quite a vulnerable state for humans to be in, and lots of animals tend to sort of nap through the day. They don't tend to have these long periods of sleep as we do. So it doesn't really make sense in terms of kind of taking ourselves out for that much. And I know I'm someone that does need and enjoys a good amount of sleep, and I always used to get frustrated with myself and think, oh, what a brilliant superpower it'd be to not need to sleep, because you could be so much more productive. But actually, since I've been researching and working in this area, I realized that sleep is my superpower. So if I give myself the amount of sleep I need, it does allow me to be much more productive the next day. So there's a whole host of reasons why we sleep. Our bodies are doing a huge amount of work while we are asleep. So interestingly, scientists back in the day used to think we went to sleep and that was it, all of our bodies shut down and nothing was happening. But actually, what we'll come on to see is that we're actually incredibly busy while we're sleeping. And while we're asleep, it allows our body chance to rest. I'm sure, like all of you, we're very busy during the day, constantly rushing around. So it's the only time we really completely shut off. So it allows our body to repair muscles, to store memories, and just to get some much needed rest really from the day. And we all have an internal body clock, which is known as our circadian rhythm. So this works on cues from the outside that tells our body when to wake up and when to go to sleep. And light is one of those important cues. So I'm sure you will have noticed now, going into the sort of winter months now, the darker mornings is one of the reasons why we chose this time of year to do the topic. It will impact, we were talking about that before we started the session today. It does make it slightly harder, doesn't it, to wake up in the morning when it's dark outside. And of course, got the clock change coming up this weekend, which will give us a little bit of respite. So I'll come on to talk about that. But in terms of these cues, they're called Zeitgeibers, which is a German word for timekeepers. So essentially, light is the most predominant of these cues, but there are other things like when we eat, when we exercise, when we interact socially. And our brain's constantly looking out for these cues to understand when it should release certain hormones to make us alert and awake, and when it should release hormones that will relax us as well. So in the form of light, it comes through, always a tricky one to pronounce, the suprachiasmatic nucleus, so SEN, I'm going to call it because I always struggle with that one. But basically, it's a group of nerve cells that are processing all of these signals. And then it sends a message to the brain to release whether we want to be alert and wake up or whether we want to be sleepy. Of course, as humans, we can interfere with these cues as well. Again, animals tend to sleep when it's dark, and unless they're hibernating animals, sorry, I should say, but mostly when it's light, they're awake, they're alert. When it's dark, they go to sleep. Actually, us as humans, we interfere with that. We have, lighting put in our homes, in our offices to keep us awake, keep us more productive. We can kind of, watch things on our screens that are going to kind of send messages to the brain to keep us awake. And it's no surprise that Edison, the inventor of the light bulb, was a self-confessed insomniac, but in fact he didn't really believe in the power of sleep. So he thought sleep was a waste of time. So he was constantly looking for innovations of how he could keep himself awake. And I think his team of laboratory assistants were nicknamed the Insomnia Squads. So it gives you a bit of an idea of kind of where they were coming from in terms of these messing with these different cues. And as I said, we sleep in cycles each night. So roughly each cycle would be about 90 minutes in length, and it's made up of a mixture of light sleep, deep sleep, and then REM, the rapid eye movement sleep as well. So we go through roughly 4 or 6 of these cycles each night, depending on how long we sleep for. Earlier on in the night, we have more of the deep sleep phase, which is where a lot of the magic happens. But then as the evening or the night progresses, we move more into the rapid eye movement, the REM stage. So for those of you that wear these trackers, you might be more familiar with these different sleep cycles. For those that don't, just to sort of roughly explain, so you've got stage 1 and 1 in yellow there. That's the sort of when you're just dropping off to sleep, can be easily disturbed. Some of our sort of breathing and brainwaves start to slow down and our muscles sort of begin to relax. We then move into the light blue, so that's like a light sleep stage that makes up roughly half of each cycle. There's still short bursts of activity, but our brain's slowing down a lot more by this point, and our body core temperature begins to reduce, which is one of the kind of the triggers of sleep as well. We then move into the deep sleep phase, which is labeled here as N3. So this is the kind of most important phase of sleep where things like physical recovery happens. It's where any injuries will be prepared, and it's also a really important stage for our immunity as well. And then finally, the vivid dreaming stage, the REM. So this is often when you'd have your dreams because your brain sort of starts to flick back into activity. It's often when our memories are stored, and it's basically our chance for our brains to work through all the emotions from the day and to kind of store and process memories. So equally important. So as I said, you sort of go through about 4 or 6 of these cycles each night. The deeper sleep tends to happen earlier on, which is why often you hear about things around, trying to get to sleep before midnight and things like that. It's just to allow your body time to get into that deep sleep, but then also that REM stage is really important for those kind of memory storings as well. And as we age, as hormones change, as we go into kind of later years, these sort of cycles differ, and we perhaps need a little bit less of the deep sleep, or tend to get a little bit less of the deep sleep. So that's quite natural. So while we're sleeping, our brains are super busy. So as I said, in the past, they just thought humans were asleep and nothing was happening. But actually, as they've researched it more and more, they found a whole host of things that are happening when our bodies are asleep. It's kind of like having this supercharged, like, I don't know, PR or admin or cleaning team that comes into your brain every night and basically stores all your memories away. It detoxes and flushes out your system, gets rid of anything nasty in there, sort of clears that kind of free radicals and things like that. We reset our heart rate, blood pressure, as I said, things like immunity, lots of repairing of muscles and all sorts of things like that. So It's a really important thing to prioritize in terms of, and kind of explains why when we don't get sleep, why we feel the way we do the next day. So, time for another question for you all, which is we know all the things that happen, the good stuff that happens when we do sleep, but just to get a sense from you all of how we feel after a bad night's sleep. So, you could either pop that in the chat, or if you're happy to unmute yourself. I know for me, yeah, feel groggy the next day. It's kind of like my brain sort of wading through treacle or something like that. Everything's just a bit slow. It's just a bit harder, and tend to be, yeah, a bit more irritable. If anyone else is happy to share, yeah, how they are sort of feeling.
People in the chat saying they feel physically sick.
Mhm.
Sometimes feel like I have brain fog, have a
Yeah,
hangover,
yeah,
sluggish, slow and unable to focus, shaky, brain fog, irritable, short-tempered, frustrated, short of fuse, and all of the above. Someone said,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and that's all sort of understandable, isn't it? Like I say, all those kind of processes, that sort of clearing and sorting of your brain. I guess it's like I don't know, like if you have a really untidy room or something, something that's kind of, yeah, bothering, things aren't kind of sorted and stored out. So it's maybe a bit harder to work your way through those things, and you're gonna be slower to react. Um, if you think about things like driving, most driving accidents are caused due to lack of sleep. It's just about that response time and those processes. We're just not setting ourselves up well to show up the next day. And of course, sometimes it's completely unavoidable. Things disrupt our sleep, and we'll come on to talk about that. But where possible, just to set ourselves up for the best possible night's sleep is really key here, again, in that preventative kind of approach. So thank you all for sharing. So in terms of how lack of sleep affects the workplace, so as you can see from the price tag on there, so research shows that lost sleep costs the UK economy £40 billion per year, so it's huge amounts. And there's actually 200,000 working days lost every year as well due to lack of sleep. So it's a really big factor. So anything that you can be doing to help your employees and yourselves to get and improve their sleep is really going to have some huge benefits for your organisation. All these sorts of things here that we talked about in the chat are quite similar. That kind of brain fog, things like irritability came up a lot. You think about health and safety wise as well, if people are in more manual work, greater risk of accidents, but it's also affects our mood and our energy levels. So not only are you going to feel tired, but actually research has shown as well for our mood that when we don't have enough sleep, we find it harder to regulate our emotions, and we tend to move more towards negative emotions and reactions than positive as well. So there's lots of different factors at play here. And again, from research, we can see that tiredness is the biggest factor affecting productivity as well. So 61% of employees said that tiredness was the main thing that affected their productivity at work. So, if you can support, as I said, your teams or yourselves to improve that sleep, it's really going to help everyone to kind of show up and kind of work better together as well. And of course, it's not just to do with our well-being and our mental health, it's also to do with physical health as well. So this isn't to try to scare everyone, and this is about long-term sleep deprivation rather than just 1 or 2 nights of bad sleep. But there is research to show links between all of these different areas in terms of sleep increasing our risk, at least. Dementia is an area I'm particularly interested in. I'm a trustee of a dementia charity, so I'm always on the lookout for new research around the dementia and kind of studies that are being done. And there's a huge amount of research in the area looking at the link between long-term lack of sleep and dementia. Usually gets talked about as Alzheimer's, which is a form of dementia. And this is thought to be because of a buildup of sticky plaque that happens in the brain, which is seen to be kind of linked to the risk of developing dementia. And again, that goes back to that cleaning team analogy. So if you're not getting the good quality sleep and the amount of sleep you need, you don't have that team going in to clean all of those things in your brain to kind of flush that out of your system. So lots of interesting research, and as ever, there's always newer things they're finding and different ways. But this isn't to freak you all out or anything like that. It's just to understand again that why, in terms of why this area is important. And of course, there's lots of things that will disrupt our sleep. Anyone with children will know, they're one of the worst, aren't they, for sleep disruptors? I have no magic. I'm not a super nanny, I'm afraid, with that. Things like pets, especially if you have them in your room. I mean, technology is a huge one, which I'll come on to talk a bit more about. There's external factors, light, noise, of course, things like shift work, ill health, all sorts of different things. Some of these are unavoidable. Some perhaps we can kind of look to address as well. Even who you share a room with, so it could be pets, could be kids, but it could be a partner that snores as well. So 42% of adults snore. Apparently more common in men, and also men tend to snore louder than women as well, apparently, according to research. But so I'll leave you guys to fight that one out with your partners this evening. But I think it's, again, things, some people are naturally kind of led to snoring, but there are some preventative things as well. So things like sleeping on your side will help to avoid snoring, because it just helps to open up your nasal passages. Body weight, particularly if you're carrying weight around your neck as well, will increase because the airways are more constricted. Smoking causes inflammation in your passages, so again, making you more likely to snore. Alcohol as well. Alcohol is a relaxant, but it also relaxes your muscles as well in your neck and airways, so there's more vibrations and movements. So often I think you hear that people don't snore, but when they've had a drink, they might be more likely to snore, and that's one of the reasons why. But there's also other preventative things like new pillows. There's lots of allergies and sort of dust mites that can build up in old pillows. You can wear nasal strips, wear earplugs if you share a bed with someone. I've got some I'd recommend at the end. And I guess if all else fails, sleep in separate rooms as well. Again, if you're both not getting quality sleep, because it won't just be the one listening to it, but potentially the one snoring as well that isn't getting the quality sleep that they need. But often when it comes to sleep, we're our own worst enemies, perhaps drinking a bit too much caffeine in the day, the zombie scroll, as they call it, at night, kind of feeling like, you finally sit down at night, you've kind of finished work, maybe got the kids to bed, bit of me time, but actually you can easily lose yourself, can't you, on social media, and what you think would be maybe a quick check of one of your favorite platforms ends up being an hour later and you don't know where the time's gone. There was an interesting article I was reading recently that called it the time procrastination, that thing of, oh no, I deserve this time at night, it's my time to sort of just relax and enjoy, but actually it's detrimental because it's taking away from what could be either relaxation, rest time, or indeed sleep time as well. So in terms of experts, sleep experts on this vary in terms of their advice. Some of them are really strict about tech. It's like no tech, 2 hours, up to 2 hours before bed, no phones in the bedroom, all these kinds of things. I think for me, my advice would be it depends on how it affects you as an individual, because we're all different. I think be mindful of what you're watching or consuming. If it's quite sort of content that's going to stimulate you, or perhaps quite violent kind of things you're watching on TV and things like that, that is likely to have more of an impact on your sleep. And if you find that you are someone that goes down those rabbit holes, then it's good to sort of put some preventions in place. So I think most phones now, if you go into the settings, there's usually under wellbeing, there's some things around like shutting your phone down at certain times of the day. There's quite a good app called OneSec, which basically every time you try to go into certain apps, it will come up with a prompt, and it will either give you like a few seconds breathing exercise. It will say, did you know you've gone on TikTok 4 times already today? Do you definitely need to go back? These little prompts, all those things that we know, but it's just that kind of makes you think again. So I think, again, if this is something you struggle with, there are things that you can trial yourself. And for the insomniacs, among us, which will be 1 in 3 of us will be affected by insomnia at some point in our lifetimes. So it's quite a bit more common than you think. But I think with this, it's not necessarily going to last forever. It's the first thing to know. We all might experience occasional episodes of insomnia. So I think, kind of there are things that we can do to try to improve it. So things like practicing good sleep hygiene, which I'll come on to. Getting outdoors is super important, especially now that we're kind of more limited in terms of the daylight hours as well. So trying to get out first thing in the morning, by sort of lunchtime, at least, will really help with those the zeitgebers, those cues that come in through your eyes that tell your brain when to be awake, when to go to sleep, and to help your body to manage that sleep cycle. Taking regular pauses through the day. So often we're rushing around, as I said, we're kind of full on, we're not actually giving ourselves breaks throughout the day. And then we just expect to be able to switch off at night. Whereas, of course, if we're living in that high stress mode and we're constantly on, our body hasn't had time to regulate itself through the day. So it's going to take much longer for you to be able to wind down and switch off at the end of the day. So if we can just orchestrate a few short pauses throughout the day, that will really help you to manage your sleep cycles. Things like having a warm bath before bed, or a warm cup of milk is sometimes something that's recommended, which I'll come on to. And just doing things to help you wind down, like listen to music. I'm a big reader, so I love just getting a book, and that really helps me to switch off. And then the don'ts are, if you do struggle with insomnia, obviously things like caffeine, you really want to look at how much you're drinking and what time of day. Things like alcohol will affect your quality of sleep as well. So often when we drink alcohol, you have that pass out, kind of like you can fall asleep quite quickly, but then often you will have a much lighter sleep. So you don't tend to get into those deep sleep phases when we were looking at that sleep cycle. Tend to stay in that light sleep phase, which is why the alcohol is something to do with the hangover, but a lot of it is also to do with that lack of sleep as well. And then think about your technology use. Avoid napping through the day and things like that. And just make your bedroom like a nice sanctuary as well. It wants to be somewhere you want to be and feels relaxing and feels calm. And of course, there is a strong correlation between stress and sleep as well. So stress is another of my kind of key areas that I look at in terms of how we can manage stress and what we do to kind of help work around that unavoidable thing that we're all faced with all the time. But it will affect us. So again, some research here showing what kind of impact that has on our sleep. But it's again that sort of vicious cycle as well. So if you are stressed, you're less likely to sleep. If you get less quality or less hours of sleep, then you find it harder to process your emotions and kind of make decisions the next day. So therefore, things will feel more stressful as well. So it's just again to be mindful of that and kind of what you can do to help support yourself. And the importance of rest as well. So, surviving without sleep is no longer a badge of honor. It used to be something people would quite sort of proudly display, like, oh, I could survive on just 3 hours sleep a night and look at how successful I am. But actually, thankfully, that narrative is beginning to change. You've got quite, kind of significant people, things like the CEO of Amazon, talking about how he prioritizes his sleep. Oprah Winfrey speaks out a lot about this, about her strict sleep schedule that she has. Tennis players like Venus Williams, a lot of sports professionals now will talk about that. And I know Venus Williams says that sleep is her one key thing that she says has made her the difference between success and not for her. So people are starting to realize, and I think again in terms of work, we need to kind of think about the importance of that, but also rest as well. So it's not just about sleep itself, but are you giving yourself a chance to recalibrate? Are you living in a always on culture where you're just constantly frantic and busy? And as I said, if you're not giving yourself chance to rest, chance to pause, chance to take 5 throughout the day, then you're going to really struggle to then switch off at night. So, what are some of the good things to do to promote sleep? So, if any of you that said that you're good sleepers, feel free to pop in the chat if you've got any of your own tips as well. It's always good to share between us and learn from each other as well. Some of the things for me that I think promote really good sleep are things like exercise. So, you want to be physically tired as well. Like your body, if you're someone that's less bound for most of the day, you're not really using much physical activity, not really kind of burning off enough energy. So it's a really good way to ensure that you're prepared and ready for sleep. That thing of natural light as well. So try to get out morning, lunchtime. Don't forget on sort of wintry, cloudy days, we've probably got quite a few of those coming up now. You need to stay out in outside for longer as well. So research in terms of your light absorption. So if it's a sunny day, probably the equivalent of 5 minutes on a sunny day is 20 minutes on a cloudy day. So just try and kind of be mindful of like spending as much time outdoors. On days like today, it is really hard, isn't it, to get yourself out? But even, yeah, so I sort of stand by the back door in the morning, maybe with a cup of tea or something like that, and look out, try and look up to the sky as much as possible. And all those sort of little tweaks will help you to absorb some more light. So we talked about taking pauses, managing your stress, addressing your worries as well. One of the biggest things that causes people not to sleep is the worry that they won't be able to fall asleep. It's, one of these vicious cycles again. So things like keeping a journal by your bed is a really useful tool. So you can write down anything that's worrying you before you go to bed. So rather than it going around in your head and sort of ruminating and things like that, if you write them down on paper, or even if it's ideas, sometimes you get really good ideas and think, oh yeah, I must follow up with that client, or I must do this, or wouldn't that be a good angle for a project? If you write it down, you've got that reassurance that you're not going to forget it the next day, which is something I always think I'm going to do. And it's just written down. There's something quite powerful about committing something to paper. So just having a look in the chats. Oh, so yeah, yeah. Is it valerian root tea from Joe? That's a good one. Yeah, definitely things like herbal teas are great, aren't they? Yeah, a big fan of a peppermint tea of an evening, that kind of thing of soothing, helping your digestion and things like that as well to help you sleep. Peter, yeah, agreeing on exercising, breathing routines. Yeah, that's a really good way. Yeah, absolutely. Kind of that again, the breath work really helps to recalibrate your central nervous system and just to calm your body and give those cues again to your brain that it's time to wind down now. It's time to start to relax and sleep. Another vote for tiredness as well. Yeah, so that's a good point there, Kieran, as long as you don't overdo it. So it is quite interesting. So if depending on what type of exercise you like, often we are exercising late at night. So if you go somewhere like a gym, there's lots of unnatural lights, isn't it? It's purposely bright, it's purposely loud, potentially. So what you could inadvertently be doing is waking yourself up rather than tiring yourself out. So I know depending on work schedules, you don't always get the choice of when you can exercise, but if you can do it earlier in the morning, better, and then sort of more like of the stretch, Pilates kind of relaxation things in the evening would be ideal. But I appreciate, yeah, life isn't always ideal, but yeah, it's a good point, Kieran, about that. Thank you, everyone. So moving on to sleep hygiene tips. So sleep hygiene is gets quite a lot of talk about this. You've probably often seen it on social media. It's essentially just, yeah, kind of what you can do to make a conducive kind of environment to aid you to better sleep. So things like temperature of the room. So if you're too hot, you're likely to be quite restless during the night. Equally, if you're too cold, you might struggle to fall or fall off to sleep. We've talked already quite a bit about the role of technology, about creating that calm space, thinking about your intake of caffeine and alcohol, blocking out lights and noise. So again, I've got a few sort of things that I use, sleeping aids that I'll share with you at the end. Making sure we just have a nice relaxation routine. Like don't necessarily rush, like, don't have to quickly rush, brush your teeth, take your makeup off, do whatever you do before you go to bed, but actually make it part of the process, make it relaxing. give yourself that time to kind of wind down. Even thinking about things like the natural or materials that you've got on your bed, if they're all sort of, kind of unnatural polyester kind of things, they're likely to not help you to regulate your body temperature during the night, but also, again, not conducive to a good night's sleep. And things like avoiding eating late at night as well. So if we eat late in the evening, our bodies are then going to need to produce energy in order to process and digest that food. So eating earlier, if you can, in the evening will allow your body to have done all of that work before you're trying to then fall off to sleep. And the clock change as well. So this Sunday, so clocks go back an hour, which in theory means we get an extra hour in bed, which for some of us will, gladly take and enjoy. And for others, it won't be quite that fun. Anyone with young children will know that they don't pay any attention to this. And also for some of us, even just that hour clock change will have an impact on our circadian rhythm as well. So if you are someone that tends to be impacted when you're traveling with jet lag and things like that, or even the clock change, some of the things that you can try. So again, that natural daylight, getting out into any kind of vague lightness in the day, using tools to help you sleep. So things like eye masks. So I'm a big fan of an eye mask throughout the year. With the clock change, it will be slightly lighter in the mornings now, so I'll probably continue to wear my eye mask for a while longer. But as it gets darker in the mornings, I will, ditch the eye mask and potentially switch to something like a sunrise alarm clock. So you want to try to get some light in your bedroom. So things like the sunrise alarm clocks just gradually create light in your room, and it just helps you to wake up in a more gentle way rather than kind of groggily feeling around in a very dark bedroom and trying to wake yourself up. Adjusting the meal time. So as I said about the digestion thing, you might want to consider having your main meal at lunchtime and then a lighter evening meal. That can help people to regulate their sleep cycle a bit better. And don't forget, you can do it as a gradual shift. I know it's officially, isn't it, at 2 a.m., change it back to 1. But if you're someone that really struggles with this, why not do it in sort of 10-15 minute increments leading up to it, and kind of just all start going to bed a bit earlier, whatever works for you. So again, it's just about playing around with these things. And for some of you, you'll be like, yeah, I just enjoy the extra hour and it won't affect me, which is great. And of course, with this sort of reduced sunlight hours as well, there's more likelihood then that you're going to have something called a seasonal affective disorder, SAD, which is sometimes known as winter depression, because it only tends to happen in areas or times of the year when we have low levels of light. And it is very similar to a lot of the symptoms that you'd find or with depression. And it can cause things like low mood, heightened anxiety, even things like strong cravings for carbohydrates as well. So our bodies will change in terms of what they're kind of craving as well during the winter months. And of course, might have an effect on your sleep as well. So again, some tips around kind of what you can do. Some of these will be sort of similar to what we've talked about already, but things like sitting near a window. So even if you are predominantly inside most of the day, just sitting in front of a window can really help with things like this. Or you could even invest in a light box as well, so light therapy box during the winter months, and use those to help to kind of replicate the sun as well. Now let's see, is that on? Yeah, sleepy foods. Is that the one you can see? My slides have gone a bit wayward. Yeah, okay, great, thank you. See some nods. So as well as food keeping us awake, it can also help us to sleep as well. So some of the examples here are all things that you can consider including in your diet to help your body to create a really healthy sleep cycle and awake sleep routine. So things like bananas contain something called tryptophan, which helps us to produce serotonin and melatonin, which basically work in tandem to promote a good sleep cycle. Almonds, so nuts always get mentioned, don't they, in these sort of things, but almonds contain magnesium, which is really good to help our muscles to relax. So again, if anyone's experiences things like restless legs and things like that, that's a really good, magnesium is a really powerful way to help our bodies to switch off. Oily fish like salmon includes B6, which again helps us to produce melatonin, which is one of our sleep hormones. Calcium, I think I mentioned earlier about the warm glass of milk, often sort of something your grandma might recommend to you. But that milk is, or dairy, and calcium is known to help you with kind of having a good quality sleep. Oats we've got here as well. So they've got vitamin B in them. So again, tryptophan, melatonin, serotonin all included in there. And then walnuts as well. Again, another boost for your melatonin and tryptophan. Also got omega-3 fatty acids in them as well, which is kind of all together makes a really good thing. So don't worry, it's not about eating all these quickly before you want to go to sleep, but you can have them at any time of the day, just included in a general healthy diet. Excuse me, and it will just help your body to naturally support that sleep cycle. And then just, yeah, helping you to wind down at the end of the day. So create your own wind down routine, and this will be different for everyone. You don't have to do as the photo shows here, you don't have to sit for hours in the dark meditating. It can just be simple little things that you can try, you know, sort of dim the lights, experiment with your use of tech, maybe try some deep breathing, listen to some relaxing music. We've had things like, yeah, herbal teas are really good. Using your journal, do a bit of stretching. You know, just try one or two things and see what works for you. And then if you, again, it's about consistency. And if you practice a regular routine, going to bed at the same time each night, ideally, few different things that you go through, then your body will start to take those cues and think, right, okay, now it's time to sleep. Now it's time to wind down. And yeah, these are my favorite sleep aids. I'm not endorsed by any of these brands. Unfortunately, don't get discounts or freebies, but these are the things that I like to use. So this works do a great deep pillow spray, which I love. It's kind of probably got lavender in it. So essentially you can use similar things. Again, a few spritzers on your pillow and it just signals to your brain like it's time to sleep. And the lavender helps, you know, it's known properties to help with relaxation. An eye mask, not necessarily a particular brand. I'd just go for one with an adjustable strap, and also if you can splash out on a silk one, they're really the best ones to go for. Neome do a really nice magnesium sleep butter, which is, yeah, just lovely again to help your muscles to relax, and again a nice cue really for sleeping. And if you struggle with external noise, snoring partners, I really like these wax kind of moldable earplugs, but again, some people kind of can't get on with sleep plugs, or it's a bit of trial and error really. So again, it's just finding what works for you and kind of creating that nice routine for bed. So just as a quick roundup before we look at some questions. So things to increase or include. So pauses throughout the day, create that nice relaxing environment, make it somewhere you want to be and somewhere you want to sleep. If you're struggling with anxiety or stress, like keep a journal and notepad by your bed, write those things down before you try and go to sleep. Use sleeping aids if they work for you. Try things like breathing at night just to help you switch off. And if you can, just have a regular sleep and wake time. It always sounds really mean, but even at weekends, roughly to stay within those same going to bed and waking up times will just help to support your body's natural rhythm. And then to reduce or avoid, so things like alcohol we talked about, and caffeine, the impact that can have on your sleep, eating late at night, too much screen time and blue light, if you find that is having a negative effect, to sort of monitor that. And then sort of, yeah, blocking out unwanted light.